Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about Ness's contest prep and her training and her diet.
Yay! Do you want me to start, or you?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, previous training background, a little bit about you, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. So I come from, I got into strength training through theater. It was, I was cast for a gender switched adaptation of a Shakespeare show, and I had to get pretty buff. I was cast as one of the leads of the show, and so there was this big battle at the end. We did a little, myself and another female actor did a wrestle, like we wrestled on stage, and so we had to sort of look the part. So I had a personal trainer hired. I got into strength training, somewhat more like bodybuilding than powerlifting. But then, graduated, came out to LA and started dabbling with strength training. And so, yeah, I come from a powerlifting background. I've done, 2 powerlifting competitions before. But I've always had kind of like a love and hate relationship with food. Since the competition really did start in college of, my professors saying, there's always going to be somebody skinnier out there. There's always going to be somebody who does more work out there. There's always going to be somebody who can resist eating these foods that will make you fat out there. And so, I took multiple dance classes at one time. You're staring at the mirror for multiple hours a day, constantly comparing yourself. And it's a pretty vulnerable time as a female, in your late teens, early 20s. So I did have this sort of poor relationship developing with food. I had sort of a bout of, disordered eating. And it was very difficult to come out of that. I was
primarily in the form of food restriction.
Food restriction, yeah. I also, I did some binge and then purging as well. So I did have, somewhat of a tumultuous relationship with food. And so, yeah, that was definitely one of the things I truly enjoyed about strength training and powerlifting specifically is that you have to fuel your body with energy. But I don't think I truly solidified that until, becoming a coach for barbell training over the last few years.
So would you say prior to going down this path that strength training helped you out of that?
For sure. Yeah, I do believe that. Yeah, because you almost were punished for not eating appropriately, when you're trying to hit your maxes, when you're trying to hit the weights on the bar, during the squat, during the deadlift, you're kind of, you're basically punished for not fueling your body and not respecting your body enough to be able to, fuel it what it needs to continue functioning in the optimal way.
So when I met Ness, we were coaches together. She was also a barbell coach and a nutrition coach. At the time I met her, she did have a very healthy relationship with food, but we knew about her prior history.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit, we're a little bit cautious when Ness expressed interest in competing in bodybuilding. So by bodybuilding, I am being inclusive of all divisions of bodybuilding: bikini, figure, physique, fitness. So about 2.5 years ago, Ness and I were working together, and I don't even remember how the conversation got started, but we talked about maybe a new challenge for her away from powerlifting and prepping her for a competition. At the time, we didn't know if she was going to be in the bikini class or the figure class, and I'm going to admit that I was very cautious and had some reservations knowing her prior history and her relationship with food, as bodybuilding and getting yourself ready for the stage, no matter what, is extremely, extremely restrictive. So we walked delicately down this path. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. I think she was very, very protective. And coming from myself, I obviously know how secure I am with food, and I think you were just very protective also, you know, because you care about me, but also because you had, you know, some experiences of, you've had some intense restrictions.
Correct.
And so like your division when you were competing, correct me if I'm wrong, but your division when you were competing is much more restrictive. You had to get to a lower body fat percentage, and it wasn't so like, you know, for bikini, I feel like I still didn't, you know, and that was also a testament to you. I didn't feel like I was getting down to the very lowest depths of my capacity. You know what I mean? And so I do think that if I were in a different division, it would have been significantly harder for me.
And we're going to talk about how we did that in a helpful way, and some of it is how far you're coming from. So Ness tends to stay on the leaner side, and that is her body type. So her push may have not been as long or as hard or as restrictive as somebody else's would have been. So as a coach, you know, I was very, very cautious, and I'm like, is this bringing up any bad behaviors? And not just bad behaviors, the relationship with food and the relationship with your body and how you feel about it. So we have been kind of on this prep for a period of time in all different phases. Some of the phases early were actually putting some muscle back on you. Is that correct?
Yes, very correct.
Okay, so it wasn't just a cut. So we have been on this path together for about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of time of just putting muscle back on. And I was able to see that Ness was in a healthy place by her willingness to eat and put the muscle on. And if she was unwilling to do that, we would not be sitting here today.
I didn't know that. Interesting. Cool.
Because I mean, what do we need? And you were like, you know, just, and the other thing is just constantly, the constant communication for us and tracking all of the small stuff through the process and being just very, very observant. And the other huge change that has come since we began the process 2.5 years ago is Ness is vegan, and she was not when we started. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I kind of went through a little epiphany, if you will. Well, maybe we should just rewind a little bit. We had kind of a false start.
We did. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a false start for the show. We had planned and intended on doing a competition. Actually, we had 2 false starts.
We did.
Yeah, we had 2 false starts. So the first time, you know, I was kind of prepping. We were starting to lose the weight, I think. And then I went to Europe with my husband and
on a prep,
yes. I was still very dedicated at that time. You know,
eating in restaurants.
Yes, eating in restaurants. Trying to get like grilled chicken and like zucchini in restaurants. Still pretty flexible, but then I got some food poisoning that lasted, I think,
quite a while.
10 days.
Yep.
Yeah, 9 or 10 days. And so it was a little more severe than I've ever had for food poisoning. And I just totally crashed. And, you know, that's one thing about the prep is, you know, when you're in it, you're like, cool, I can keep going. But when you've derailed off of it, it's very difficult, in my experience, to just hop back on thinking that you're in the same place you were before, because you're not, you know?
And the timing wasn't right. There was travel, and we realized that at that time, she couldn't prioritize the prep.
Yeah.
And then I think we had another kind of false start last year.
Yes,
in April. Too many other things going on in life and did not have. So Ness is a full-time student.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going back to school. I'm getting prerequisites to pursue veterinary medicine, so I'll be applying.
Total career change.
Total career change. Yep, I'll be applying
Coming initially
for
from the arts, and then fitness and barbell coaching, and now another total career change. So we kind of looked at, you know, what capacity did she have to prep, and remembering that as important as the prep is, and the goal of the show was, that there were other life priorities that had to come first at that time, and making the decision kind of to come off prep. So we came off prep last spring, and which we were already starting to cut again, and then we just spent months putting muscle on you, months building and transitioning the type of training. So Ness comes from a barbell training background for strength, So the reps are relatively low. There is lots of rest between exercises. It is about increasing the amount of weight on the bar.
No supersets.
No supersets, never moving quickly. There is very, very little attention in that. It's not about the aesthetic. So powerlifting is not about, it is just, very objective. How much weight can you lift?
Yeah.
So that was her training background coming into the start of this. Hated cardio, obviously loved to walk, her dog Luna, but hated cardio. Never moved quickly in the gym. Like, how much rest are you taking between sets? I don't know, 8-10 minutes? I have no idea.
She would say things like, this workout should take 45 minutes max, and I would be out of there in 2 hours.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't know how she does it, but I will say it's much easier now. I mean, now that I kind of know the pace, now that I think I was very resistant to the type, and there's a burn, it's not something you feel with powerlifting. So there's
the type and understanding that's what you need to do. So I have a similar background, and the best way I could explain it is I came from power sports and strength sports. So powerlifting, Olympic lifting, some amount of CrossFit, and thought that I could just do those things and get on stage as a bodybuilder. So it's like, I can continue to do the snatch and clean and jerk, and I could continue to bench, squat, and deadlift, and not do any other leg stuff or anything else, and be this exceptional bodybuilder, which was a bit naive. So recognizing that if you are going to immerse yourself in a sport, you do as the sport demands. So I was not going to develop my body in the way a bodybuilder, like a high-level bodybuilder would, with only doing those movements. And it took me a while and stuff, and some of it was getting kind of my own ego out of the way. Put it this way, I was not going to get on the powerlifting platform, I wouldn't get out there and powerlift and attempt to squat and deadlift and say, hey, I just do leg extensions and leg curls in the gym, and think that I'm going to come out here and squat this massive amount of weight. So we were both a little bit kind of went into this in a very, very similar way, is that the idea of bodybuilding, hypertrophy training body parts was very, very unfamiliar to us. And we had not yet, both of us, really developed a deep respect or an understanding for what that was. So I went through the process several years ago, and I was able to kind of baby step Ness through that process and stuff, and even getting over the reward of the weight on the bar.
It was very humbling, actually.
Yeah.
I came into it almost with this idea of like, of course I can do this. Like, I'm a power lifter. I've lifted X amount of, pounds before. Like, what's a little hypertrophy? But it's actually, I have a massive amount of respect now for the posing, first of all.
Yes.
The posing is very challenging. It's not just standing up there. There's contortion of the body. There's, the angles that are most optimal for you. So I do have a huge respect now for people who do this full time. And
in the gym, I think the shift is, it is not about performance and ego. It is about putting in the consistent work. So on no one day it's like, I'm going to go in and PR my squat today, or I'm going to go in and lift this. It is not about that. It is about the accumulation of work and consistency over time. So an enormous shift coming from what would be performance-based training. So we came from performance-based training, and then we're shifting over to like, you are going to accumulate this amount of work. It may not have the clarity of numbers. Like maybe you're going to squat less today because you moved faster, or there were more reps. So there's way more variables at play in bodybuilding training. So we gradually progressed over time and maintaining the things that kept it interesting for her. So at the end of the day, the only way we're going to do this is that if it brings joy. And it brings Ness joy to continue to do the barbell lifts. So we left the barbell lifts and some kind of serious strength training in there up until very close to the end, when there were a few back tweaks, and I decided the risk was not worth it at that point. But we maintained it because that was a thing in the gym that she truly enjoyed, at least initially, going for. The other thing is, when you start to get very, very lean and close to competition, you find reward in doing like smaller movements because you see more muscles moving. So when you're doing a smaller movement that may not be as taxing to the entire body, something like a lateral raise or a tricep press down, When you are not in condition, you're like, well, I could be squatting or deadlifting and doing a whole lot more work in this amount of time. But as you start to lean out, those smaller movements come with more reward, right? I mean, we look in the mirror.
And they matter more.
They do.
Yeah. They matter more to the overall physique. I mean, you know, there's a reason that, you know, of course we all have our own different body types, but, you know, if we include any sort of show pictures, you'll notice there is a big difference between myself, you know, like my lats versus the lats next to me versus the lats on the other side of me. And everything that you do, you know, has an impact on that. And so those little movements, I think that's almost...
So you had a great foundation. The way I see it is Ness had a great foundation from strength training and barbell movements, and what we did was the decoration and icing on the cake. So by transitioning over, doing more hypertrophy work, doing more body part training, doing more small muscle groups, we were able to decorate the already excellent foundation. And we trained to give you an idea. The lighting is getting very nice.
I know,
right now.
it's getting like very glorious. I'm looking a little more tan.
So I look shorter because Ness is sitting on her feet and my knees are not happy with that, so I'm on my butt.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Another one?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So we'll pause here.
We'll pause,
yeah, we'll pause here.